The smell of roasted turkey, sweet potatoes, and pumpkin pie had always been the heartbeat of my home every November. For 40 years, Thanksgiving was more than a holiday, it was a covenant, a sacred thread binding family together, no matter how frayed life became. That was why, when my phone buzzed with a message from my eldest daughter, I didn't expect it to feel like a knife twisting in my chest. "Mom, we're skipping Thanksgiving this year. The kids need space. We'll do something another time." Just like that, cold, sharp, and final. At first, I stared at the screen, blinking at the words as if they might change if I read them enough times. My hands trembled slightly. I thought maybe she was joking, or overwhelmed, or maybe she meant they couldn't make the long trip this year. But then my son replied to the group chat, "Yeah, Mom, it's too much. We need a break. Don't take it personally. Don't take it personally." As if there was any other way to take being told your presence was too much. I sank into the kitchen chair where I had spent decades rolling dough with tiny, flour-covered hands that weren't mine but my children's. Memories swirled around me, my kids racing through the hallways in their pajamas, the chaos of cousins piling coats on my bed, the laughter, the arguments, the inevitable hugs at the end of the night. And now, silence. Not because life had moved forward, but because my children, the ones I raised, fed, sacrificed for, had decided that my home, my traditions, my love, had become an inconvenience. The ache in my chest was unbearable. I had given them everything I had, my time, my energy, and, when their father passed, my strength. Yet in my golden years, when I thought they would want to keep traditions alive, they chose absence. My tears fell silently as I sat there, the clock ticking too loudly in the quiet house. But something inside me refused to break. I remembered my cousins, the very same cousins who had come year after year, no matter how busy their lives became. Cousins who lived just a town over but always brought their families, their laughter, their stories. They weren't obligated, they weren't bound to me by anything more than childhood bonds and shared memories. And yet, they came. When I was sick last year, it wasn't my kids who dropped by with soup, it was my cousin Maria. When the roof leaked, it was my cousin David who brought his ladder and spent the afternoon fixing it. They came not because they had to, but because they wanted to. That Thanksgiving, instead of canceling, I set the table anyway. The long oak table gleamed, the china plates I had saved from my wedding glimmered under soft candlelight. And then, one by one, my cousins walked in, their children trailing behind them, carrying pies, casseroles, and bottles of wine. They hugged me tight, kissed my cheeks, and filled my kitchen with chatter. My house pulsed with life again, not because my kids were there, but because love showed up in a different form. That night, after everyone had gone home and the dishes were stacked neatly away, I sat alone by the fireplace. My children's absence no longer felt like a wound, it felt like clarity. For years, I had worried about what I would leave behind when I was gone. The savings I had scraped together, the investments my husband and I had carefully built, the $2 million that was supposed to be my children's inheritance. But why, I thought, should I leave my life's work to those who couldn't even make time for one evening together? Why should the people who treated me as an afterthought inherit the fruits of my lifetime of sacrifice? So, I made a decision that night. I called my lawyer the next morning and rewrote my will. Instead of dividing my estate among my children, I directed that it would go to the cousins who had shown up, year after year, without fail. The people who reminded me that family is not defined by blood alone, but by presence, by action, by love that does not ask for convenience. Weeks later, when word reached my children, they called in a fury. "Mom, how could you do this? That money is ours by right." My daughter's voice was sharp, almost panicked. But I stayed calm. "No," I said softly, "it was never yours by right. It was mine to give. And I have chosen to give it to the people who treated me like family when you decided not to." Silence followed, then angry protests. But I did not bend. Over time, something remarkable happened. My cousins, humbled and grateful, began to include me in everything: birthdays, graduations, Sunday dinners. I never sat alone again. And as for my children, the shock of losing what they felt entitled to eventually forced them to reflect. Some of them pulled away completely, unable to face the truth of their neglect. But one of them, my youngest, returned, not for the money, but for me. "Mom, I'm sorry," he said one evening, his eyes brimming with tears. "We got so caught up in our lives that we forgot what matters." I forgave him, because forgiveness, too, is part of love. But I never regretted my decision. The inheritance stayed as I willed it, a testament not to bitterness, but to the truth. Family is not about who shares your last name, but who shares your table. When I am gone, the world may never know the quiet woman who gave her fortune to cousins instead of children. But my cousins will remember. They will tell their children and grandchildren about the Thanksgiving when love triumphed over obligation, and how a woman chose to leave her legacy not in bloodlines but in bonds of the heart. And maybe, just maybe, my children will remember too. That the greatest inheritance I ever tried to give them wasn't money, but time, tradition, and love.